Well, welcome everybody as we kind of have people come in here. Glad to have you. This is going to be fun today. This is our first Conscious Leaders Forum. I'm very excited about having you guys all join us today. We'll get going in a couple of minutes. So welcome everybody. We'll start in 1 minute and we'll just give a chance for everybody to kind of pile in here. And very excited about this. This is going to be our first Conscious Leaders Forum. And we'll plan on doing these on the first Tuesday of the month, of each month. And we'll go from there. Hopefully everybody's having a good week so far. All right, so before we start, I just want to kind of, we're kind of experimenting with this, and we'll talk a minute about what a forum is. But what we wanted to do is have an interactive way, depending on how many people actually join us. So for now, because we're using the webinar, in order to ask a question, you'll have to raise your hand. And then at the end, we'll do a Q&A. So as I'm going to do a small presentation to kind of lead off the theme today, which is about consciousness. And if you have any questions, specifically on a slide I'm talking about, because I want this to be interactive, that's when you raise your hand. And then at the end, you make notes as you're going through. And then at the end, once I finish the kind of presentation part, then we'll open it up for questions in general. But if you have a specific question on one of the slides I'm talking about, raise your hand. And Rachel will unmute you and you'll be able to come on and visually interact with me, because that's what I found is in this type of learning, when we're talking about consciousness, being able to talk to each other, I think is really important. So if everybody's ready, we'll go ahead and get going here. So basically, what is a forum? Well, a forum is a place, meeting, or medium where ideas and views on a particular issue can be exchanged. And, I'm really excited today because this is an opportunity I find when I'm in groups of people. The questions that come out from these are amazing, because we all have our own vantage point or viewpoint and our own perspective of how we live in the world and how we view things, how we perceive them, our level of consciousness, our childhood experiences, everything enters into that. And so, we're kind of all on our, we've kind of coined the term on our own planet, and being on our own planet, it's important, especially as we grow as leaders, to be able to communicate, not just with ourselves and really show up as a leader, but also when we're communicating relationally to others. So this is going to be more of a personal consciousness. I mean, it'll relate to your ability to lead, whether you're in, in our business or you're in another business. The idea here is to create a forum where people that want to work on themselves and grow have an opportunity to interact in an interactive form. So the first ones are kind of like our beta test. We're going to see what works, what doesn't work, and we'll modify as we go. We'll always want suggestions. So if you think of ideas of how we can make this more interactive or make it better, man, that's what it's all about. Because basically, in becoming a highly conscious person, one of the important things is feedback. And so we want to make sure this works for everybody. So with that, why are we here? Well, basically, hopefully to continue to evolve your level of consciousness. And if you have the life book, you can go back into the early 20 elements and read more about consciousness and the levels of consciousness. But basically, it's our perspective of how we see the world. And the world around us is volatile. This is called Vuca, or volatile, uncertain, it's complex and ambiguous. The world is gotten pretty nuts out there. And so with that, the only way we can assure our continued well-being, and that's kind of my shtick, as a critical care physician now, helping people, create health and well-being, it's about how can we create the flexibility and resilience to adapt to the changing conditions. Because here's the fact that it's brutal, but it's the truth. Today is the slowest rate of change there will ever be. I mean, the world is accelerating. I mean, every day new stuff's coming out, and our ability to adapt to that is real. We're really struggling. We're not being taught this in school. We weren't taught it in school. Very few people really totally understand it. And so we're looking to create this forum as a place where people can come and learn more. Now, this is not psychotherapy. I'm not giving therapy. I'm simply hoping to have better understanding and knowledge, better practical tools to help work on this, going to the mental gym to work on these key areas of psychological flexibility. And then the third part, obviously, is being able to rate and become this so we can become, basically at a higher level so we can adapt and be flexible to the changes occurring. So basically, there's two key processes in human development. When we're little kids, we're in wonder and we're curious. We're out on the playground, we're in the pool with our friends, and the world is one big curious place. We're happy almost all the time until we get tired and cranky, and we want to learn everything, and we want to just are open to curiosity. We don't even have to know why we want to know. We just want to know everything. And then we're told by the time we're 50,000 times no, and we start getting put in this box of social order that really takes away some of that edge. And depending on, at 5 and 6 years old, when we haven't developed our prefrontal cortex, we may be told things like we're stupid, or it could be you're not worthy, or it doesn't matter what it is, but we take everything in, and we can start to create things inside of us where we start repressing things. So it's important in this to understand that the two key things as an adult is to wake up and to grow up. So what I mean by waking up is the delusion of control and power. We seem to think in our egos think inside, if we can control the outside world, then, and have our own worldview, and we can get everything to go to that worldview, that basically it will allow us to suddenly be okay. And it just isn't true. And in order to grow up, properly, it's necessary to own up to those parts of our nature that we dislike so we can reintegrate ourselves. One of the things for me, I grew up, my father was in the Air Force, and every 3 years we would move. And because we moved, obviously I didn't like to lose my friends, because I had created great friends, but also there were things that I did at that point in my life that I could learn from, and then I could go and start anew in a new place. So that's kind of what we're talking about growing up. It's that, on average, and I talk about this in the life book, but, by the time we're 14, we have the skill sets to be able to get a job, go through school, and basically live our life with just that amount of consciousness. But what we don't realize is that the world is changing, and if we're not becoming more flexible, we're going to be in trouble. So basically, but if we evolve to the point where we are actually growing up, we can then basically lead better. We can show up as a leader better, because if we don't evolve as a species, we're going to end up like the dinosaurs the way we're going, because I think it's clear on everything we see in the news. So the whole idea of what we're talking about in expanding your consciousness is expanding your window of tolerance, right? We want to be at a point where we're expanding our window of tolerance. And what I mean by that is basically where we're not rigid or we're not reactive. Our tolerance is being able to be flexible. If we're too rigid, basically the world's got to be a certain way, and we're going to find more frustration as the world changes, because the world is continuing to move on. If we're too reactive to everything going on, we'll be in a chaotic state, and either way it's very stressful. It's going to lead to poor health and well-being. So it's kind of being in the middle. So the term that I like to use, that was developed by Barrett several years ago, is we want to have internal stability and external equilibrium. This is a highly conscious state. This is a state where whatever the world throws at us, we're able to take it in, make the adjustments to it, and be able to make the choices that move forward and allow us to not get turned sideways by the events of the world. The external equilibrium is that with our world, we're able to work relationally, mostly with other people, in a state that keeps us out of the drama triangle and keeps us in a state of creativity, of co-creation, and being able to work with other people. So that internal stability, basically that's where we're going to start. So the question I had, and what I kind of labeled is, what is that voice inside my head? That mental dialogue on inside your head that never stops. What is it saying? How much of what it's saying is true? How much of it is important? It's not you. If you're hearing it talking to you, obviously it's not you, correct? It's actually something else. So it's very important that we realize that most of life will unfold according with the forces that are far outside our control. And I wanted to use this next slide as an example, because if we look at this next slide, your thoughts don't have much impact. They really have mostly impact just on you. Because if you look, this was the luckiest person in the world that day, I think, because, this, you can see where it bounced off the side of the mountain and flipped over and missed the truck. And no matter what his thoughts were or how careful he was driving, thank goodness he was on the right side of the line. But the things are happening in the world and we just don't have control of them. And for whatever reason, we think all that mental talk inside is giving us control. Because, basically, we have we get nervous, we have fear, desire-based energy. It's like a tea kettle inside and it starts building up inside of us. And like you could be angry at someone. Think how many times you're telling them off before you actually see them. And this is where, the technology that we've developed, our human transformational technology, like stop, challenge, and choose comes in. Because, stop, challenge, and choose, while you're having this dialogue inside and that inner voice is talking to you and saying, yep, how dare them do this and da, da, da. If you can stop that process, stand away from it and look and see that thought process is not you. You got upset about something, which is just an emotion. It's not you. And now you're feeding it. And when you feed it, you go into it. And once you're in it, you can't see objectively. So it's important to be able to sense and say, oh, what? Let me stop. I'm feeling really anxious. Let me challenge why I'm feeling this way. And why don't I choose an outcome? So basically, you don't, destroy or damage your relationship. So that's part of what I'm talking about when I say, working on, reintegrating ourselves, growing up and actually becoming more able to deal with situations from a different place, a place of creativity. So that voice is narrating the world for us, because why do we need that voice? I mean, if we look at it, a beautiful, the dogwoods in Washington, D.C., and you look at it and you say, gosh, this is absolutely gorgeous. And your mind, your awareness, your pure awareness sees that perfectly. You don't need to describe it. But if you do describe it, then we start bringing meaning to it. And then, so basically events occur and then we tie them into, like, let's say you see a yellow Mustang. And your boyfriend or girlfriend drove a yellow Mustang and you broke it up years ago. So you have this gorgeous car going by and suddenly now your day's been ruined because it brought up a thought from the past of something you repressed where you were upset because you broke up with someone, and then it just takes over. So why we do the narration is because it makes us feel more comfortable with the world we live in. It brings balance. It's like comparative reality. It puts us in a position where we suddenly, feel more comfortable because we kind of feel it. Even if it's anger or negative emotion, we're feeling this thought, this cognitive emotive loop. So basically, if you look at this, you can see everything is brought in and it comes in as in factual, in reality, as a pure videotape. But we make meaning to it. And then interpretation creates a narration that makes you feel more comfortable. And that's why that voice is going inside your head all the time. And it continues and it continues and it continues. So how well do you know your inner roommate? The only way to find peace and contentment is to stop thinking about yourself. We spend so much time thinking about ourselves. I who is always talking inside will never be content. It's always a problem with something. There's always something going on. The solution is really to go inside and let go of the part of you that seems to have so many problems with reality. The reality is you are not those thoughts. You are not those feelings. You are the witness of those feelings, just like you are of any other thoughts, feeling, or anything that happens. And you have you have your persona, you have your personality inside of you. And that personality basically is occurred over the years, depending on how you were brought up, your mentors, your parents, your education, your schools, the social environment you were in, all those things matter. Did you have a mentor? But basically, those inner disturbances it's important to remain objective. Because as soon as you start getting sucked down the rabbit hole inside with feelings or thoughts or emotions, you're no longer objective. You're no longer able to really manage it. So basically, you'll never get rid of your problems inside by changing the outside world. It has to come from within. So I think that's really important for us to realize. So, let's just take some examples. So you think, well, what am I talking about? Well, did you take a shower this morning? While you're in the shower, it just seems like that voice inside of you, it's like having a roommate, right? And if you're listening to it, they're basically there all the time and they're talking to you, and it's just nonstop in the shower. Did you ever take a shower is meant for us to clean our body, to wash our hair, to get ready for the day. And during that period, because we're isolated in there, we're not exposed to any of the distraction devices, suddenly we have this inner dialogue going on, and it's talking about all things. It could be anything. What am I going to have for breakfast? Boy, I can't believe I got to meet with my boss today. It goes on and on and on. Or, you have the one where you left the house and then you think, God, did I leave the stove on? And it can ruin your whole day. It can over and over and over. Now, obviously, if you left the stove on, you want to go back and make a change or call up and have someone check it for you. But beyond that, if we basically just think about it, it can ruin our whole day. It can make us less productive. And it's not us. It's simply something that we're doing inside. So I'm going to tell you a story. I mentioned this story, but I think it's a good one. So guys at work, he's an executive, and he gets a note in the afternoon to come see his boss. So basically, he's busy in a meeting. He finishes the meeting. He goes down and his boss is gone. And he thinks, oh gosh, I'm starting to wonder, did I do something wrong? And so then he drives home, and on the way home, he's thinking more and more about by Friday night, he's out and he's having dinner with his wife and his kids. He's not even there. He's thinking, God, what did I do? By Saturday, it's turned into, I'm probably going to get fired. By Sunday, he tries to get a hold of his boss, can't get a hold of him. By Sunday, he gets up on Monday morning an hour and a half earlier, goes in thinking I'm fired, gets in, never been in that early, gets there, goes into his office, waits for his boss. His boss sees his boss come in, immediately goes down. And his boss goes, oh, I had 2 tickets to the Lakers that I wanted to give you, and all that was made up, just created 3 days of suffering and misery, all made up by the voice in the head, right? So it's really important to understand that if we're going to change ourselves, we need to be able to observe what it is we're changing, and we need to basically fire that inner the roommate, because basically it's keeping us from being successful. Okay, who are we? This is the third part, and this is the part I'm going to kind of finish with. Who are we? Am I the one who sees when I see, who hears when I hear? Who am I? Are you your name? Because people say, well, I'm Dr. A. Well, great, that's your name, but would you be the same? And it goes on and on and on. But the reality is, who we are is simply the awareness we have. All that other stuff is just basically things that we observe, things we see. We're inside seeing these things. So let me give you an example. So let's basically look at this. If you saw a puppy sitting there out in the field and you were watching it, you'd probably have joy, and it's cute, and you'd feel warmth and maybe love. And then all of a sudden, basically behind you, you heard a rattle. You heard the rattle. You would immediately go from this smile, feeling good, to suddenly, what would you have? You'd have immense fear, right? You have this fearing occurring. And the fear could overwhelm you because, and actually in this case, if that was the rattlesnake behind you, by hearing and fearing and jumping away from it, that might have saved your life. And that was the original intention 10,000 years ago, or even today, if you're out in the woods or something, to protect you. But beyond that, that fear is something that needs to dissipate. In the case, if there's a rattlesnake, you have an adrenaline rush, you jump, you move out of the way, and you run or fight, depending on what, or freeze, depending on, what, or fall. You could even faint, depending on what mechanism is the most likely to save you. And that's built into our hardwiring. But beyond that, to continue that fear and now have a fear of snakes moving forward, then is something made up in your head. You're now saying, okay, I'm fearful. I'm not going to the woods anymore. And suddenly you have this inner voice changing everything. So here's the deal. That dog is not you when you observe it. It's a form, just like basically that snake wasn't you. And the fear you're feeling isn't you. It's simply something that happened that you want to go all the way through. So, and the last thing I just wanted, before we open it up for Q&As, I just want you guys to understand that basically the whole idea is that you are this awareness, the seat of awareness. And the more we can come from that perspective, the better we are. So our thoughts are pretty close to us, but they're actually not us. Our feelings, emotions, they're a little further away, but they're still not us. And the third thing is the world, the external world that we can observe. As I look out the window here and look at the beautiful ocean, that world is just the same as my emotions. So as I got on today, hoping that this would be a nice way to interact, that is just a thought I'm having and a feeling I'm having, just like The ocean is the ocean. They're not part of us. Who we are is this incredible thing of consciousness. And this is kind of the start of opening up maybe some thought processes for you, that the more we can remove ourselves from our thoughts, our feelings, and when I mean from our feelings, I don't mean you don't feel your feelings. You feel your feelings, you identify them, and you let them pass through, because they'll only takes about 90 seconds for them to go through, and then you can go on with your day. It's when we hold this stuff inside and create these thought feeling loops that then start to overwhelm us. So the idea here is to set you up for internal stability, being in position where you now can take control and command of yourself and the world you live in. And the external equilibrium is being able to help you now interact with others in a more meaningful way. So basically, that's kind of it for the overview. And now I just want to open it up for questions. Rachel, we got any questions?
Yes, hold on one second. Okay, Dr. A, we have one question. How connected to inner equilibrium is the idea of eating cleaner and eating low glycemic and on plan?
Okay, so so you're talking about, okay, the brain is the physical organ that allows us to be aware. There are neurological system. And the more we take care of our brain, the clearer we think. So it's a great question. And the question in essence is, the more we eat healthy, we eat antioxidants, we don't eat a lot of red meat, we eat healthy fish, with full of omega-3s, low glycemic, which stabilizes the blood chemistry of the brain, so it can function. It doesn't like large shifts. It's a very, very highly active energy source. Uses a lot of oxygen and a lot of fuel, a lot of glucose. So with that, it needs to be stable. When we have high glycemic meals, we increase it, the insulin goes up, that's why we get the cravings. So absolutely, the first thing you can do, the easiest thing, well, I won't say it's the easiest if you've been eating hot fudge sundaes and eating at McDonald's, but one of the first things you can do to help, and there's a great sections on the ultra health sections within the book talking about protecting our brain and the things that can help us protect our brain. But yeah, our brain allows you to think clear. Same thing with exercise. We know that if you exercise in the morning, you get 12 hours of increased lucidity, better cognitive processes, better memory. So yeah, everything you can do to protect your body, and specifically also helps your brain. So hopefully that's helpful. And by the way, Rach, can people actually come on and ask questions? Can they physically come on?
Yes, I'm going to have Stacy Pendergrass come on.
Great.
1 second, let me make her a panelist. All right, Stacy, are you there? You want to come off mute and on video and ask your question?
Hi, Dr. A.
Hey, how are you?
Good, thank you. I have a question about, I have a problem stopping in that moment, in that stop, challenge, and choose. And I would love to hear from you some suggestions on how to stop in that moment. I also was actually going to submit another question that I can ask a little bit
Ask
later.
that after this one. Yeah. So that's a great question. And it's actually, it's happening before you even realize it's happening. So the most important thing, it's everything in consciousness development is about self-awareness. So your body is actually giving you signs. It could be, something in your throat. It could feel a pressure in your chest, a queasiness in your stomach, tenseness in your jaw. All those things are early precursors. And what you want to do is you want to recognize, and as soon as you recognize that something's off. So that's what I mean by internal stability. If you're internally stable, basically you may get a little blitz of that, but you become so cognitive of that, you're able to adjust it before you drift down below the line and go ballistic, right? So as soon as you sense it, you want to stop what you're doing, reorientate, ask myself, what am I feeling? Okay. And then explore that and sense it out, because it's usually one of 5 feelings, right? I mean, it could be a variation on that, but there's really 5 things. It's either basically you're angry, you're fearful, you're sad, you're joyful, or you have that creative passion or energy to do something creative. It's usually one of those 5 things. And as soon as you sense that, you want to stop. And then you want to challenge, why am I feeling this way? Because there's usually a reason. You may not know it, because you have this huge subconscious area that's got all the experience of your whole life. And you're not going to know all those things. You can't possibly remember most of them. But what you can do is you have control over your consciousness. And the state of consciousness is becoming aware. So in that moment, as you become aware, so stop doing anything unless you're driving a car or something. But as long as you're safe, stop, really focus on that, do that, and become the observer. And you are the observer. And then you've got the subject, right? The subject is an emotion, a thought, a connection, a comparative reality. And before it takes you down into the drama triangle, before it wrestles you away and pulls you down that sucking big gaping hole, which most of it, by the way, is stuff in the past. As we're learning, like right now, you're asking questions, you're open, curious, and want to grow. As you're learning those things, then stuff's going to bubble up, because you're going to have something that keys off, and you're not even going to know why, but it'll start bubbling up. And so that's why if you think of it this way, you've got this huge container that's acquired, and it could have been when you were 5, it could have been last week. So things happen. And what we do is, rather than fully sense, express them, and feel them, we repress them. And so they're down inside of there, and they're below the waterline. So the idea here is to use each one of those as an opportunity. It's almost like you're going on a cleanse, right? You're actually starting to clean out all the garbage that's inside of you. And each one of these opportunities, when you start feeling, so it's not even bad that you're feeling it. It's actually, you're getting connected now to understand how your awareness now is going to become the dominant factor. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. What's the other question?
My other question, the 5-in-1 is designed to work fantastically when you are perfect on program. And myself, as well as some of my clients, struggle with the idea of perfectionism, that, if you can't do it perfectly, then why bother? And it's one of those internal things that we work through. But I wondered if you have some suggestions when someone struggles with perfectionism and they are just wanting to give up as soon as they're kicked out of fat burn. What would you suggest to those people?
Yeah. So that was what I talked about. Who am I? Basically, you are this awareness. Beyond that, all that other stuff is made up. You're making all that stuff up, and including that I need to be perfect. That's a story that we learn when we're growing up, and it's usually because of fear of failure and rejection, or because our parents were afraid to disappoint our parents. And it doesn't matter. If you get the flu, does it matter where you got the flu? No, you got the flu, right? So all of us have some degree of that. But here's the real issue. What are we looking to accomplish? If we focus on leading from the future that we want, right? If we want to create optimal health and well-being, that's what you need to focus on. And knowing that we are humans. If we were robotics, maybe, or AI, maybe, but we're humans, and we are not going to do things perfectly. In fact, perfectionism is actually a fault. So that's a great way to look at it, is it's a fault. So if it's a fault, then that's something that I want to basically remove from me, because it's holding me back. It's what we talk about when we talk about upper limit problems. It's that we've got things that actually never allow us to be fully free. And it's about being in our comfort zone. So we have this fear of perfectionism. We want to stay in our comfort zone, and we will not. It's the difference between Carol Dweck talking about a growth and a fixed mindset. Perfectionism is a fixed mindset. Things have to be a certain way. I have to do things a certain way, or they don't work. Well, basically, I can tell you that reaching optimal health and well-being is not a straight line. It is a path that will require multiple levels of change. And that's why I spend so much time on the mind, because you can reach a healthy weight, but if you haven't changed in here, you still think you're a heavy person.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So if that's true, that doesn't work. So that heavy person will then want to go back to equilibrium, their equilibrium would be an overweight or obese person again. So it's really important that if you state, well, I'm a perfectionist, okay, great. How is that serving you? Because it's not at all.
Right.
Okay, so that's the whole thing, is to ask the question, do you want to create optimal? And I always start with that question, because if that's true, all these other things are secondary to that.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
That makes sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
And here's the other thing. If you've got your life book and you basically go out and someone next to you has escargot or something that you loved in the past and you really want it and you have it, okay? You are a human being, okay? Something that you craved, you love. You're sitting there, you've had a glass of wine, your inhibitory neurons are down. You make a choice that's not necessarily on the trajectory of your long-term commitment. You say, you know what? Note, why did I do that? Okay, because I had 2 glasses of wine or 3 glasses of wine. I should have just had 1. And so so next time I'm not going to do that, right? And the other thing you do is the next morning when you get up, you have, I happen to eat the brownie, but bottom line is you have a healthy feeling and you're back on track again. Now, you're right. If you don't do it perfectly, you're going to go out of fat burn sometimes. But learn from the experiences. Don't beat you. See, when you say I'm a perfectionist, why even do it? Because you're making it about you. You're allowing that inner voice to have command, and the inner voice is your ego. It's your desire. It's its desire to make the world comfortable for you. And so it's saying, oh yeah, listen, why even bother with this thing? I didn't like it. It was, causing me not to be able to eat the things I want. Let's just go eat the things we want. Let's gain our weight back. And then let's just be back in our comfort zone, sucking our thumb and with our our blankie. So bottom line is really, when it comes down to then it's nonsensical, that voice inside, being able to create that separation, that balance where you move back. And now those thoughts will be close to you, because they are close to you, but they're not you. Those feelings that you have of like, oh, shame, guilt, or whatever, they're not you. They're just simply something you brought meaning to, which in the past brought you comfort, which is not serving you now. And then obviously the external things, the world around you is further away. But know that all those things are not you. You are pure awareness, basically, that you have control of. You just got to stop, challenge, and choose, use it over and over, and you'll start to see separation. And eventually you'll start laughing. I needed to be a perfectionist. That was your ego telling you that's not you. You actually want to be healthy.
Yeah. Yes.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You can cry. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, cry. No, feel it. Why are you crying? Tell me why you're crying. What does it feel like?
Because I have been in this this cycle of beating myself up, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And though all of those emotions that came with this cycle of eating, and the reason that I came to this program, they come back, and it just becomes this cycle. I eat again because I feel worse, and again and again, and I try to get out of this cycle, and it just seems so impossible some days. And that's why I coach, so I can stay in this, so that I can help other people and work through these. But some days it just seems so hard.
It is hard. Remember how I won't say exactly, but you're how old around? Don't tell me exactly.
31.
Okay. So basically you've had 30 years to be a certain way, right? Those are a lot of long-term habits. Those are a lot of terms that you did a lot of thinking, a lot of that voice in your head conversation. By the way, I want to be really clear, 99.9% of that stuff that voice in the head is telling you is complete BS. It's not true. It's not true. I use the longer example of the boss and the executive. But think about like, let's say you're dating and you have a girlfriend, and bottom line is she didn't answer you today, and so you're upset and you're thinking like, gosh, why doesn't she didn't care about me? And in that 30 minutes, that voice in your head made up the Kobayashi syndrome, whatever that thing was from Star Trek. Bottom line is, every scenario, everything that was wrong, could have been wrong. And then finally you get a hold of her and she actually says, oh, I wasn't answering you, honey, because this is our 1-year anniversary and I was creating a party for you tonight. Right. And, you didn't even remember it was your first year anniversary together. So think about, and then now, oh God, I love her so much. She's so great. Now that voice in your head just went and did a 360. It just betrayed her and created a bunch of stuff that was fully untrue. Stacy, that stuff in there is not true. And I'm glad you're getting emotional, because you know what's happening? You're starting to sense there is a way out. There's a way out. And that is just observation. These things are not you. They don't define you. They're no part of you. They're simply patterns in your brain that you've had for a long time, and you're now rejected. And by coaching others, it makes you more aware. It puts you more in the place. And basically, if you have to, every hour, stop and sense, where am I breathing from? Am I breathing from basically up here, shallow? Or am I breathing deep? If I'm breathing up here shallow, I'm in a state of fear. I'm in a state of this anxiety. I'm letting the past or the future get in the way and not in the present. And all you have to do is take a couple deep breaths, let it go, recenter, and look and see, I am not any of those things. You're not. You are a young woman at the start of your career with a great company that you're working with. It's going to give you what you want. And by the way, if you need to, go get help. It doesn't matter. If you need help, go get help. It doesn't make you look bad. You are simply open, curious, and want to grow. And if you need it, great, go get it. And don't beat yourself up for it, because the bottom line is feedback is the breakfast of champions. It is what allows us to move feedback from ourselves. That's why Stop, Challenge, and Choose is important. And that's why we can move forward, because basically we create that separation from our thoughts, our feelings, and actually the world, right? We are separate from those things. The world, and by the way, trying to change the outside world doesn't fix any of that stuff in here. Because you know what? That voice in there will have another problem in the next 20 minutes, right? It's just the way it is. And to recognize and move from it, that's how you start building internal stability, which allows you, by the way, to be much more proficient at building external equilibrium with the people around you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool.
And the work that I've done through TLDP and through the support of this community has helped me get to a spot where I did seek help. So
yeah, and we're not going, and here's the point: we're not going away. This is a family, a community of people who have made the decision, raised their hand, that we want to create optimal health and well-being for ourselves, and then reach out and help others. And that process is part, the whole principle behind the 12-step program is the last step, and that is reaching out and helping others. That's what helps define what we do. And that's what we do. We help people at a time when the world is nuts. It's crazy. And by the way, that roommate inside, if that was a person, and and that's actually a good way, that voice, turn it into a person, turn it into someone. And then you know what you're going to do? You're not going to spend a day with that person. If that was a friend and they talk to you like that, you would fire them. You would get rid of them, right? So fire it, fire them.
Absolutely. Cool. Thank you so much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And thanks for what you're doing to help us. Okay, we got any more, Rach?
Yes, we do. Mark, can you come off mute camera?
Trying to, am I there?
Hey, Mark.
Hey, good morning, Dr. Anderson. Good morning, Rachel. Thanks for having me on. How's everybody doing this fine morning?
Good.
Well, you kind of struck a chord with me. I needed to, get on this forum and talk to you a little bit. A little testimonial about me. I'm actually a doctor of chiropractic, and I'm out on a medical leave right now. I had a hip replacement a couple weeks ago, doing fine, but I did use it as a segue to get out of an extremely toxic work environment. So the goal is to not to go back there. I've been doing a lot of work with workers' compensation patients, and I'm really tired of working in a system where people are rewarded for not getting well. And my current fiance, we're getting married January 8th, introduced me to this program, and I've really taken a good look at the program, lock, stock, and barrel, started coaching people. And I guess my biggest concern question to you, I have this problem where my brain is my best friend and it's also my worst enemy. It gets in the way a lot. As a doctor, I interact with patients all day long. I see a lot of patients. I've been a chiropractor over 20 years, and then I get into this new form here where I can actually make a difference with people and help people. and I almost freeze. What you struck a chord with me with, for example, when the boss has something to ask you and forgets, the Lakers tickets, my worst question out there is, I need to talk to you later. And then I, make up this huge story, this huge scenario. That's one of my biggest concerns and fears that I have to deal with myself. And also when I'm trying to, work with clients and get health assessments, a lot of times somebody reaches out for a health assessment and I almost freeze and I almost don't want to contact them to do that health assessment, because I guess maybe call it fear of rejection. They're going to reject me in the program. And, we've all had it happen. I had one just the other day say, well, I know this program's over $400, so I don't even want to talk to you. So I'm working with some of that. I am processing a little bit at a time, but you're the expert. You're our main leader here, and I look forward to as much advice as I can get from you and my mentorship as well. Danielle Sizweski's a great mentor leader for me. My fiance is a great leader. I like to hear differences of opinions, and I figured I had a perfect time to speak with you directly.
Awesome, Mark. Thank you. Appreciate that. I appreciate all your hard work. And, basically, what you're in essence talking about is that voice in your head that you're discussing with isn't you. I just want to be, I can't, it's really that simple. And you're obviously not just intelligent, but you work with people all the time. So you get to hear people and all the things that are wrong in their lives. And that most of the stuff that's wrong in their life. Now, I'm not saying there aren't physical things wrong with people, but I'm saying that most of the things that are wrong with us is that voice in our head. It's the need to be right, to prove that you're right. It's the need to, and the thing is, it changes side. That voice in your head changes side. It'll go from this is good to being bad in a second if it decides so. So the most important thing is based on reality. Reality is when we're able to separate and deal with the world as the world sits without having to make stuff up, because we make stories up of everything. We bring meaning to everything. And so in your case, you have basically helped so many people within the chiropractic profession. And now you're in a situation where you're basically an opportunity to help people and you really like it, but you're conflicted because you still have that part of you that was traditionally in medicine reacting to what was going on and now helping these people. So the bottom line is you don't have to fix any of those things. All you need to do is in the moment become aware. So if you basically are getting ready to do a health assessment and you're getting a little anxious, that's because that inner voice is making it about you. It doesn't want you doing that. It wants you to go back to the world where it was in control as a chiropractor, doing all this stuff in a certain way, and you were the boss and it was in control. Remember, the ego wants to be in control. And suddenly, when you're talking to a potential client that's, they come to you as a chiropractor because their hip is killing them or their neck is killing them. And they're probably not spending money. It's probably their insurance. And if it is, because it hurts so bad, they're willing to pay money. And you feel very comfortable in your skin in that, where they come in, you don't even think about money. But when you have someone that basically could say no because of money, or could say no because of something else, there's the fear of rejection because you don't think you're good enough. And your ego saying, now you're not that good at this, Mark, you're a chiropractor. And so it's battling with you because it doesn't want to change. Remember, all growth comes from getting out of our comfort zone. So that's what the voice is doing to you. It's just simply talking to you and saying, you know what? And here's the deal. If the person says no, or you mess up on the health assessment, what you do is you do what you said, you talk to yourself, and I do it all the time. I'll say, okay, what could I have done better there? What parts could I have done better? And if I can, and if I have my mentor and you're working with your mentorship, or you have the opportunity, because the client does say yes, but ask them, hey, how could I have been better? That's open to basically grow, right? And the more we become facile with that, the more all this anxiety will go away, because you're having a battle, you're having a discussion with that inner voice. Then that inner voice is not there to serve you. It's there to serve itself. And what it wants to do is it wants to make the world a certain way. And you've been defined for 20 years as a chiropractor, and it doesn't want any of these nonsense when you're actually helping people and doing what you really want to do.
It's a constant battle. It's a constant battle every day.
So don't have the battle. Remember, it is your persona. It's all the stuff that you have from experiential part, and it's confused now with current reality. And so it's trying to make current reality something different than what it is. When you're basically in the person that's $400, basically they don't understand how incredible this program is, because if you think about it, I always say, do you eat? If someone says, is it expensive? And then and if they say, no, they don't eat, then yeah, it's going to cost you a little bit of money. But if you eat, we're going to become your grocer. You're going to get this transformational system for one time, less than $50. I'm going to coach you for free. It's the best deal on the planet.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel. So if someone says that, then I want to find out beyond that. They're saying it's too expensive because they don't see the value. So my curiosity immediately comes alive, because I know it's the best $400 you could spend in your life, right? If you actually apply it and let your ego go and be coachable and teachable, you can learn so much from this, right? I always say that the Optavia as an experience can help everyone, not necessarily what they may have come in for, but things in your life will give you a different perspective, a different vantage point, different tools in order to awaken that person to potentially a better way of living, better health and well-being. So you've got all the good, you know it inside. Stop battling with your voice inside your head, because that voice is the old. It's kind of like Scrooge, right?
Yes.
That's the doctor of the past. You're now the doctor of the future. And by the way, that's one of my favorite things. I remember reading it right when I started. Edison said a long time ago, he said, the doctor of the future will use no medicines.
Oh, no, that's in chiropractic. We agree 100%.
Exactly. And I haven't used medicines in 20 years. And I was a critical care physician. I used a lot of them.
No,
So
and I feel, oh, no, great. And I want to say, I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody here, my mentorship, everybody. 20 years ago when I started chiropractic, I was looking for Optavia. I had no idea what it was. And, here I am, a late comer later in life, but, better late than never. And this is in line with my philosophy about how I feel with people, with life. And I want people, and you were a critical care doctor, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You want to see people be more preventative instead of being reactive when they're having any kind of a problem. So we want to work with people ahead of time. Unfortunately, as a chiropractor, pain is a huge motivator. A lot of people don't come in because they want to be preventative. They come in when they're hurting, and you know how that works.
Yeah, but now you got Optavia, so now you have a profession to help with that. And here's the other thing, Mark, and I want to just give you a great compliment. To be vulnerable enough to come on as a physician, you're already beating your ego, okay? Because if you were fully ego driven, you would never do that. So you've already, remember, take every sign that you're making progress, okay? You're doing great. And I'm
my fiance's on here, and she's glad to hear you say that, because I think physicians in general do have a little ego. And
oh no, we have big egos.
Oh yeah. I've met a lot of great people in medicine so far with Optavia. And we do have a friend coach, a nurse practitioner I'm working with. Her ego will not get out of her way to save her life. And so I can recognize this.
There's a lot of mental suffering that goes with that. And so that you're in the process of, what you're doing, you're reinventing yourself. You're now, the purity of why you went into chiropractic medicine, that idealism of helping people. Now you can use this mechanism and help us change the world together. So really proud of you, buddy.
I can simply say thank you, Dr. Anderson. Thank you for giving us this gift. Thank you for everything that Optavia has done. I see nothing but pure potential with this, and I look forward to the rest of my career is going to be as an Optavia coach.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I can't wait to meet you, buddy. Thanks.
All right.
Okay.
Next up, we have Dana Worley. If you'll come on.
Yeah, Dana, come on down.
Camera. Dana, are you there?
Hey there, can you see me?
Oh,
No, your camera's off. I see your little Dana Worley. There you go.
Hey.
Hello.
My question to you, good morning, is we're talking about internal stability, and if you can speak to creating internal stability with regard to your circle of friends and the people that you relate to in your life.
Okay, so if I understand the question, make sure I understand the question. You're saying, okay, you want to have internal stability when you're interacting with the people in your life.
Right, and how it's difficult to make changes in your circle when you're working on your internal stability and your health journey.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if you read in, I think it's either element four or five about accomplices versus friends, right? Accomplices are trying to pull you back in the pot, right? Because they don't want you to change, and friends are ones that support you. So that's your surroundings. So here's the part about internal stability. It's an inside job. You can, the macro habit of surroundings is certainly there. And what you can do is avoid people that are toxic, right? Take the toxic people out of your life. And obviously you can't do that with your family, but you can isolate the time you spend with your family, especially while you're on the health journey. In the meantime, internal stability is actually whatever comes in. So these people that haven't changed, as that input comes in, you now handle it and process it differently. You handle it from the standpoint of, okay, yeah, this is what always happens here, and I understand that. But basically, I'm on a journey to create health. I've chosen for myself to create health. I'm not going to let that person trigger me into the drama triangle. I'm not going to allow them, whatever they say, whether it's, oh, you're too skinny, or, why, come on, just this once, have a drink with me, or, let's have a hot fudge sundae, or boy, let's go to Hooters, and look at pretty young girls and eat buffalo wings. Those are all basically things you can just simply say no to. And what you can do is still maintain the relation. Just say, hey, listen, if you want to, let's go for a walk. So you have more control in that environment than you want. And if the person wants to take you to a place or to do something that you've decided during your health journey not to do, then you have the opportunity to say no. And saying no, you will feel so good, and do it in a polite way. Say that, Sally, I understand you're not ready to make this journey right now. As my friend, I would appreciate, or my family member, if you love me, please, let me go on this journey. I still love you to death. We can still do things together. I just have elected not to make those choices. In the meantime, daily, that's why the app has right from the beginning, stop, challenge, and choose in it. The most important thing you can do is create a gap between stimulus and response. So the old behaviors, those old patterns, like Stacy was talking about, those old patterns, we can actually stop those old patterns by creating that gap, that gap between something happening and responding to it. Something happening, you stop when you start feeling like we were talking about with Stacy. You stop, you challenge it, and then you make a decision. So if someone says, yeah, let's go out, on Friday to Fridays, or to, whatever, Buffalo Wing or one of those places, just say no, but I would love to go, and then go to a place where you can have a nice salad and still enjoy your time together. So you have control over those things. Internal stability, you can't predict. And here's the last most important thing I can tell you. Don't try to change them. A person not wanting to change, you cannot change anyone else's behavior. The only behavior you can change is yours. And so that's where the mental gym is. The mental gym is working on that so that you're no longer triggered by those things. As long as you keep this little area up in the front here, this prefrontal cortex engaged, it will make the right decisions for you. If you go down into the drama triangle, start becoming emotional about something and not releasing that emotion and actually tying into it and building that cognitive motor loop, it will drag you into the emotion. And then you're no longer the witness. You're not the observer anymore. You're actually part of the scenario. You're in the drama versus away from the drama. And if the person gets upset, I mean, I can tell you now from working on this for so many years, I can't even watch the news on TV, because those people are like little 3-year-olds. It's like at Toys R Us, stomping their feet at each other and pointing their fingers. It's nonsensical. But because the world's got so caught up in that, most people are in that state, and they feel alive because they're emotional and their adrenaline is kicked in, and they think that's good that they feel alive, when in essence, they're killing themselves. So does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks, Dana.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Okay, we've got time for maybe one, maybe two questions, depending on how
Yes.
long my answers are.
All right. Candace, can you come off camera?
Hey, Candace.
Hey, Dr. A, how are you?
I'm great.
Awesome. This has been so awesome. Thank you for doing this. So Dr. A, I'm asking you more as a business leader of those who you have come to you and share, I'm overwhelmed. My question to you would be, what do you say when somebody's sharing the idea of overwhelmed? I imagine that's from the thoughts that they're creating in their head. What would your biggest piece of advice be if I were to come to you and say, Dr. A, I'm just so overwhelmed right now?
So first of all, again, looking at it from reality, right? So that's where I would start, because, they may be overwhelmed. They may not have kept up with the skills. If you look at challenges versus skills as your business grows, basically you need to develop the skills to keep up with those challenges. And if you don't, then you're going to feel overwhelmed. In fact, that's the classic. So that's the first thing is, are they open, curious, and want to grow? Have they been learning? Are they getting on going to the events? Are they getting on the calls? Are they working with their mentorship? Are they asking questions? Are they learning? And you can see that they're becoming a more proficient coach, because, everything all the way up to high performance conversations are skill sets that we have to learn over time. And then the other part is, or have they stayed, closed, kind of defensive and not growing, where basically they're trying to use the same techniques they started with their first clients now to work with their coaches and business coaches, because that could be factual. It may be that they actually are physically overwhelmed because they don't have the bandwidth, emotional, it could be emotional stability too, right? Like I said, or is it fully emotional stability? Is it something they just don't have the skill sets? They're not delegating, or is it actually emotional? Is it that it's become inside, and so they're kind of beating themselves up? So it's important to distinguish between those two things. So that's the first thing. If it is simply emotionally and they're just beating themselves up and taking it all, then it's basically to compartmentalize it down into segments and pieces, so you can now create some traction on it. The best, most important way to track success is to measure it, right? So I would have a full, kind of go over an aim to stay with them, find out where are they intrinsically motivated, or are they using this as an excuse, right? In other words, if they're not engaged now. So you need to know that first. Second of all, in where they are in their business, are they delegating the things that they should be delegating? And are they bringing people up, or are they being, what we would call a traditional hero coach, doing everything, right? So that would be the second. And the third part would be, from an emotional standpoint, how are they doing? Are they letting everything that happens affect them and turn them sideways? Are they working on that? So those are really going to be the key parts of that. And Candace, because that's what I need to do. So someone may need fully help in supporting their growth and being open, curious, and want to grow and become more skilled. Another person, it may be psychological completely, where they're making it all about themselves, and they're overwhelmed themselves. And so that's the area to distinguish, and then put them on the track that you think will help them. But I always, I'm curious when have somebody like that. I'm trying to find out what actually do they mean by being overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And if they say, well, I have, 3 new FIBCs that just came on board, and they want to go FIBL, and I'm only an FIBC, then clearly they don't have the skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
If they're saying I have 3 coaches that came on board and they're overwhelmed, then we know that it's probably not that, it's probably inside of their mind.
I love that. I love
Makes
the
sense?
breakdown between emotional stability or skill set.
Yeah,
That's
so it's
good.
it's really transactional versus transformational, right? It's just a variation on that theme.
That's
Yeah, because
awesome.
both of them are necessary. And if you have someone that's been a leader for a while, it's really important for them to understand that. And usually it's self-correcting, because if they are overwhelmed and they're not doing anything, then their business isn't growing, so they shouldn't be overwhelmed. But
Right.
if it is that, then it's important to help them with those skill sets.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, we are 2 minutes from being finished, but I'll take one more question.
All right, Tudor, if you'll come off camera, please. Perfect.
And while we're doing this last question, if everybody would put in their, feedback on whether you like this, was it helpful? What would you like to see differently? What are other formats? Anything to help us, make it better. So, hey, Tudor, how are you, buddy?
Real good, Dr. Anderson. It's an honor to be here. I've met you twice, believe it or not, at the convention. And it was at the concert. I was standing right next to you at the concert.
I
It was
remember
so
that.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Good to
brought you
see
some water, and I
You
thought
did.
it's pretty
Thank
hot and he's not moving from that spot. So I went and got you some water, but I'm honored because you're a very emotional guy and I'm a very emotional guy. And many times in a health assessment, I get emotional with my clients and I have no problem signing up clients. I have no problem. But the biggest issue that I have is how do you get their true why? How much time do you spend on getting their why out of them? Because that's where I struggle.
Yeah, well, I mean, bottom line is it's all about building connection, right? It's about building rapport. In the beginning, you're a stranger and, obviously you've got a nice affable face and you have a pleasant demeanor. But the reality is the world is a very scary place to most people, right? So you're building rapport. And as you build rapport, and that's why, the speed of trust is so critical. The more quickly you create a consistent interaction through conversations with your client or with your coach, the more they will let down their guard and the more they'll open up to you. And some people wear their heart on their sleeve and they'll talk about anything. And then there's others that are very repressed. And it's so really that's the key to that. The key is in any specific question, it's through consistency, building and seeing. Remember, the two sides of competency, obviously, are the character side, are your integrity and your intent, which is to help people. But on the other side, it's also the capabilities and the results. If you are balancing both sides, you'll build trust quicker, right? And you'll build credibility, you'll build influence, and you'll build the ability to be an advocate and really help them find exactly what's most important to them. So it's really a matter of that. Does that make sense?
It does. And I appreciate that. I will finish with this. The convention was something I've never experienced in my life. I'm 65 years old. And that convention, I brought my wife with me, changed our lives.
Awesome.
It changed our lives. So I just want to thank you for starting this whole journey. And it's made a big difference in my life. And I'm just so thankful that Chris Pettit brought me into this world of Optavia. So
awesome. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for the conversation. And I want to say something. When you say, you're an emotional person, I at one time, I played football, played sports, and, traditionally guys don't cry. Bottom line is I just always sense that to feel your emotions fully is kind of one of the most important things in life. And it's not just to be happy all the time. It can be, tears of sadness, of joy, of just experience, of awe, and all those things. The more we come in touch with them. Now, you don't want to go off the hinge with a client you don't know and just start turning into a big baby, but they're going to sense. Remember, we sense emotion and feeling, and compassion and empathy are some of the most strongest things we have as fellow humans, and they're sorely missing in the chaotic world we live in right now. So that's a good thing. So Tudor, thanks, and go get them.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Anderson.
All right. So we're out of time. We're 1:02, actually 2 minutes over. Hopefully this was helpful, but give us our feedback so we can continue to evolve and grow this. And for all of you that were on today, thank you for joining. And let's go out and this week work on, remember, you are not your thoughts, your feelings. You are the awareness of those things. You are yourself. Plan what you want to increase your health and well-being, and come with us and help us create a better world. Thanks. See you.